I think I watched The Matrix too much as a kid. I think it was largely in part because I really liked that long leather trench coat and the sunglasses look. That was really cool. In my spare time, I did practice dodging bullets in slow motion, but I think the profound effect that The Matrix had on me at a kid, at probably too early of an age, was it start to get me to question my reality. To wonder what if this was all a simulation? And in fact, I used to test the boundaries of that simulation. I used to look for glitches. I would try to turn a corner really quick or look behind me really quick and see if the elements were still loading. I used to pick a random spot in space and go, I see you, hoping that some one-way curtain would drop and the aliens would reveal themselves. It didn't work, but it was worth a try. But as I grew older, that infectious idea that the Matrix implanted in me of the simulation seemed to fade. I was reflecting on why that was. And I think, as corny as it may sound, I think as I connected to other people, as I made friends, as I saw my soul seen and I saw theirs in glimpses, I think I recognized that my perception is my reality, and that no one, not I, nor anyone else for that matter, had much control over that. That was until somewhat recently. Not because I believe I have any more evidence that we're living in a simulation or not, but because I believe we are currently building the tools in order to simulate a reality for us. The tools that are increasingly powered by machine learning, by artificial intelligence, deployed at scale through automated agents, ones that can produce vast amounts of text, of audio, of video, ones that are indiscernible from human-made content, bypassing the very systems we have traditionally relied on in order to mitigate and detect them, obfuscate the line between the authentic and the artificial. And these technologies no longer just fill the internet. They shape it. They alter how information spreads, how credibility is signaled, how consensus is formed. And it is the culmination of all these factors that distort the very cues that we use in order to make sense of the world around us. So the question that arises for myself is, as these technologies continue in their escalation, in their proliferation, if the line between a human-made and a machine-mediated reality continue to blur, how do we know who or even what we can make sense of the world with? See, about a year ago, I took on a fairly ambitious project in which I wanted to understand the means by which emergent technologies were affecting our beings, how they were affecting our relationships, our experiences, our interactions. I told you, fairly ambitious. And it's within that research, I came across a phenomenon called the dead internet theory. The dead internet theory, for those of you unfamiliar, was proposed on some fairly fringe forums, and it proposed that large swaths, if not the entire internet, had been populated and overrun by bots, by software programs, by automated agents that were there to mimic you, to mislead you, to monetize you more often than not. And this was 2016. This was considered fairly conspiratorial, far-fetched. It was paranoid, to say the least. But to those that are chronically online, we recognize the dead internet theory is no longer a theory, but a condition. In fact, it's being corroborated more and more by empirical evidence. Just this month, a prominent cybersecurity firm confirmed in their annual bot report that 51% of all internet traffic was perpetrated by bots. That they were pushing genuine human activity to the fringes due to the sophistication, speed, and deployability and access to artificial intelligence that was powering them. And they can increasingly bypass the very systems that we have traditionally relied on to mitigate them, such as CAPTCHA systems. You know that little thing you check off that goes, I'm a human? To even more advanced authentication systems, such as biometrics, facial recognition, using deep fakes to spoof them. These are the kind of threats that are affecting both individuals and industries, from trying to steal your data, to impersonating your loved ones, to draining your bank account before you or your bank even knows the wiser. It is the kind of effect that's costing $180 billion a year, from sectors from finance to government to even your healthcare systems. But these are the threats you feel. They're more discernible, they're quantifiable, $180 billion. What I want to focus on are the more seemingly imperceptible threats. The ones that are easier to scroll past, ignore maybe. These are the kind of threats in which bots, let's say, flood Amazon review pages. They flood them in order to drown out genuine or negative reviews in order to push you to buy certain products. It's the kind of imperceptible threats in which bots flood comment sections and forums, trying to draw you in through emotional manipulation, whether it be fear or disgust, distorting and disrupting democratic processes. These are the kind of threats in which bots gamify algorithms and search engines in order to push fringe beliefs and factless information to the foray, drowning out expertise and deceiving us of what we would consider public consensus. And it is the culmination of these seemingly imperceptible threats that distort the very cues that we use to make sense of the world. It's known as social signal manipulation. These are the signals, the cues that we rely on to shape our perception of the world around us. They shape our perception of what matters, what is normal, and what is credible. And what my research showed is when this is done at scale, our ability to make meaning of the world both independently and collectively begins to erode. You know, I thought that when I was a kid, the simulation might reveal itself with a glitch. I didn't realize it would be built in front of us click by click and post by post. But it's looking to the horizon that I see the challenge escalating. It becomes no longer just about what we are seeing and hearing, but how we are doing so. As advents in AR, for example, can layer digital illusions onto physical environments. As VR creates entire new virtual ecosystems. As brain-computer interfaces can translate our thoughts into machine input, that line between experience and interface starts to blur. That line between my thoughts, my senses, in the last vestige of an unmediated reality, that which I can sense in the physical world, becomes porous with someone else's code. Now, I want to make something clear. I'm not a Luddite, okay? I'm not an anti-technologist. I believe this kind of technology can transform our world for the better. Just look at the advances we're making in modern medicine. But I think it's increasingly important to recognize that these technologies are not independent. They are not autonomous, at least not yet. And what I mean by that is they are powered by people. They are designed, they are developed, they are owned by people. Ones who are increasingly becoming their own de facto regulators. The ones with the means and the track history to embed their incentives, their worldviews into the very systems that we use to make sense of the world around us. And these tools no longer just distort content. They are reshaping the very conditions of belief to the point at which it is no longer just tools shaping us, it is perhaps the people disseminating these tools shaping our values through theirs. But I do believe there are several ways forward. There are several points of intervention, but it is naive to believe it will come at the hands of a single person or a product. I'm sorry, Norton Antivirus, you're not going to be our savior this time. I believe it comes at the hands of coordinated responses across systems of actors, whether it be civic society, technologists, government, There are people behind these tools' design and their dissemination as much as there are people behind their regulation, as much as there are people to advocate for their cognitive autonomy and their social safety. And one thing I want to leave you with here before I leave the stage is, throughout my research, this notion of technology moving in cycles seemed to come up. And more often than not, it occurred through rapid proliferation, unregulated and unmediated to the point of absolute hubris, at which point there was some form of collapse and catastrophe. And it is then, and only then, that there's some form of regulation and remediation. It was not spurred by market self-governance. It was not spurred by government proactivity. It was more often than not spurred by public outcry. So my question for you today is, what will it take this time? What magnitude of harm are we willing to endure before we act? And will we even believe it when it happens? I believe this doesn't just take innovation, it takes intention. Because our ways forward lie not only in our capacity, but also our desire to proactively create human-centered and flexible systems that prioritize our safety over our hubris. Hopefully it won't take dodging bullets in slow motion. I'll take a leather trench coat, though. Thank you.